long time no see. I've been at my new job for over 6 months and it doesn't feel like it's been 6 months, which I guess is like a clear sign that everything is going well, right? I think if 6 months feels like forever, you're probably in the wrong place. This is the advice that I would give my younger self. Yeah. So I read a lot as usual. Not every book left an equal impression on me. I managed to manually catalog every book that I have read in my memory, spanning back to my childhood. I typed it all out according to categories that I feel makes the most sense to me. With all this discussion going on about Goodreads versus Fable versus Storygraph, I'm not so sure that these book-related apps are going to be there forever. And when it comes to like Goodreads and Fable, there seems to be a business model underpinning all of it. Maybe it's because of the generation I'm from, but I very much prefer having a web page with links into subpages. I don't have to scroll through any kind of like extraneous information. I just need to have a plain and simple catalog with no links, just title and author. That's all. So I did that. My friend told me that it's almost like I'm building my own library. I really like that idea. I like the idea that every person is a library and every book that you read is adding one more book to your library. When I was cataloging, I was also quite surprised by how much I actually remembered of all these books. When I was like typing it all out, the plot and the characters and what I liked about those books actually like came back to me. I also really like that idea that, you know, every person is kind of like a hidden database and you need to have the correct keywords to recall the information, but it's there, like somewhere in here. I think I will just go by category. Siren Queen by nghi. This author recently became very popular because she has like a fantasy series, The Singing Hills. I did read the first book of that series. My friend says that she will loan me the rest of the series up till book 5. I think book 5 is the most recent one. So I read book 1, I really liked it. I also read The City in Glass by this author as well. The one that really left a very strong impression on me is Siren Queen. Probably because the world building was very immersive. I wouldn't say that it is an easy read. Reading it is a bit like plunging into the deep end, but what I found there was something that stayed with me. So this is set in like an alternative Hollywood, like a Hollywood that is set in like a darker fairy tale setting. But even so, this Hollywood is very much one that doesn't give opportunities to people of color. In that sense, I would say that this book does classify as critique. The main character is a Chinese girl who grew up in America, who has always longed to be on the silver screen, and she does get her way there, but she has to fight tooth and claw for like every position. And what really catapulted her to fame was when she managed to land a role as a villainous, kind of like a monster. When she plays this monster role, there is something about her that makes her irreplaceable, and she utilizes that irreplaceability to push the boundaries. She protects her friend. She also uses her power to negotiate, to ultimately save her own life. In this world, everybody is a little bit of a monster in their own right. The people in charge are definitely not 100% human. I think like another thing that I really liked about this book is how the main character and several other characters are definitely queer. They're not just queer-coded. Even for Luli, there is a pressure on her, we call it compat, right? To pair up with a fellow actor, have a wedding and have like children. And all of this is determined by the company. But she actively resists all that. She refuses to allow any man to touch her body. She actively pursues her relationships with other women, even though like her literal life is on the line. So I found the heroine of this novel quite unforgettable. I know that this book is like not everyone's cup of tea. I have read the reviews, but if you're up for something a little different, a little bit challenging, then this could be the book for you. Wednesday's Child by yiyun. She's already kind of big for having written other books like Must I Go? Her other novel, The Book of Goose. When it came out, it became like quite big. everyone started reading it. This book here is a collection of short stories written over like 2 decades. It took me a week to get through this book. So I wouldn't say that this book put me through a reading slump, but more of that this book demanded a lot of my bandwidth and attention to get to the end, because I found myself thinking about every short story after I had read it, and that left no room for anything else. Most of these stories are about being a woman, some of them are about being a mother, some of them are about being an immigrant, but I think like the stories in here that affected me the most were probably those about being a mother. More than one story had a mother character whose child, preteen or teenage, killed themselves or died under mysterious circumstances, and the mother is clearly grieving her child, but she also needs to get through the damn day. More than one story also talks about the kind of pressure that mothers face from other mothers, from society at large. Honestly, I'm like that also. Like when I see misbehaving children on public transport, the first person I blame is not the child, but like the parents for the poor upbringing, you know? I think what this book does is that it makes it very difficult to attribute blame so clearly and so easily. Her characters exist in like a post-Trump, post-COVID world. There are many factors here that could have possibly led the child to think that this is not a world that they want to live in, that no matter how much their parents love them, it's just not a world that they want to live in. The underlying message here for me seems to be that sometimes like loving your child is not enough. I think like this is also like reinforced by how many of the teenage characters in this book are very precocious. They could have like a Trump supporter father and they know not to listen to him, and they're also smart enough not to talk back, not to fight back, but just to let their father say whatever right-wing nonsense he wants. The children here have to mature very quickly, and in a way I feel that that could be one of the reasons why the children don't last very long. But anyway, the writing is beautiful, it's exquisite. If she writes another book, I will probably pick it up. I hope she writes another one that is like Book of Goose, for reasons that are obvious for somebody like me. Okay, moving on. Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. So Ling Huang has another book coming out very soon. This book was very popular because people compared it a lot to the substance, and when I was reading it, I didn't really understand until like the action started to happen. Then I was like, oh, I see it. There's also a lot of like comparison to Mona Awad's Rouge. Maybe the premise, the central site of conflict is very much similar. There is a young Chinese woman whose parents migrated, and the both of them were musicians, but then when they came to America, they couldn't really pursue music, but they managed to instill a love of music in their daughter. She manages to pursue piano, she manages to get a scholarship, and she is a little bit famous because her parents used to film her playing the piano, upload it on YouTube. After that, there's nothing else for her to do, so she ended up doing low-wage job as a waitress, and that's when she got noticed by somebody who invites her to work at their company. The scary thing in Rouge is how characters trade their memory for beauty, but in this book it's a little bit different. The characters' appearances literally transform. Everybody is able to achieve the ideal look, no matter what ethnicity you are originally from. However, the products are actually highly experimental. They cause a lot of damage in the long run, but of course this is not disclosed to anybody. The main character, she finds out that it is no coincidence that she was hired to work in this company. She was actually marked for it. I'm trying very hard not to give away too many details because the reading experience is something that I feel you need to go in blind to like fully appreciate it. You experience a narrative from her point of view, and her point of view is not the most reliable, but I don't mean that she is lying to the reader. I mean that she herself does not have a strong enough sense of self, and also does not have a strong enough grasp of her own childhood memories to accurately process what has been done to her and what is being done to her. Another book that I read is Dallergut Dream Department Store. I know it's very popular, I know there's a sequel, but I think for me there was like a bit of a mismatch of expectations. I didn't really understand where the story was going. I really thought something was going to happen, you know. Each chapter is a bit more like a vignette, so each chapter has its own self-contained little story. Is this what you can call slice of life? I have seen some people describe it as slice of life. I'm not sure I agree with that, because even in slice of life like manga, there is usually like a thorough line of action, but in this book there is no thorough line of action. I found the writing very, how do I say this? I think that just because something is translated from a foreign language doesn't automatically make it for adult readers. I think actually that this book would function very well as young adult. In fact, the main character herself is quite young, and the things that happen to her are not very deep. And on top of that, the most affecting chapter I felt was the one with the old lady. But the moral of that also comes back to filial piety. So the themes and the approach and the characterization, they are very PG-13. Just because it's very popular and just because it's translated doesn't mean that it is like a serious work. If I had been told that, oh, this is like a YA translated fantasy novel, okay, fantastic, I will go in with the expectation and I will leave feeling like, yeah, this is like a cute story. But the way they marketed it, it seemed to be like an escape for adults who hate their reality and they wish that there was something else they could do. They need to heal their inner selves because they are so traumatized by capitalism. Then this is 100% to me a children's book, not to world-weary adults. Another book that I read that I guess is older YA is The Celestial Wife by Leslie Howard. This is based on a true story. It's about a girl who grew up in it's like a Mormon village. It's miles away from an ordinary village. So they do have some contact with the outside world, but she was brought up to eventually be married off to an older guy. So the way that this society is built is that all the girls, the moment they hit 15 years old, if I recall correctly, they need to be married off because that is their purpose in life. The men who get to marry these little girls, usually they have power in their society. We have a situation in which only like a very select few older men hoard all the women. They collect them as wives, wife number 1 all the way to wife number 7, since they are very young, and they leave none of these girls for the boys in their age group. For the boys, then they have to work their way to a position of power so that they can eventually get a wife. And a lot of them are not happy with their lot. They are not happy with literally doing all the manual labor and doing all the hard work of putting food on people's tables just to be denied a family and denied what they see other men getting. So a lot of them leave. But when they leave, it's okay. You know, it is when the girls leave that it's not okay because girls are property. So the main character here, she thought that she was going to get married to somebody close to her age. She and him already have like a pre-established relationship. However, at the very last moment, because of who her parents are, she is married off instead to like a horrible old man. She decides to run away. Even after she has run away, the people in her previous community try to like track her down and try to sort of kidnap her. This book is definitely a page turner. But for me, I found it very horrific because I know that it's based on true stories. Another book that I read is I Who Have Never Known Man by Jacqueline Harpman. This is translated from French. So this book has been around a long time, but it is recently becoming trendy again to read it. Maybe because of the title, right? Don't you feel a little bit envious? This is speculative fiction. It's set in an unidentified time. A little girl, she's living in an underground bunker and she's surrounded only by other women. However, she is the only girl around. Everyone else around her are like women. And they live in this big cage. There is no sunlight. There is nothing going on. They are not allowed to hit each other. They are not allowed to argue with each other. They are also not allowed to cry or to laugh or to show emotion. They just need to be there. For what reason? No one knows. There is one toilet. They are provided food to feed themselves, and there are prison guards. Nobody knows who they are, and the prison guards also don't really treat them any better. This little girl, she feels left out because all these women around her have memories of their previous life. They remember what it was like to have boyfriends, to have husbands, and more importantly, I guess, to have sex. So for her, she feels that they are purposely excluding her because they refuse to share information with her. They tell her, what is the point in telling you? Anyway, you are never gonna meet a man in your life. You are never going to fall in love and date and get married and have kids. So I tell you for what? So she tries to like build her own little world in her head. One day, just as the guards were about to enter the cell to do like routine things, a siren goes off. He just drops everything and runs off. And the women were like, huh, what's going on? Naturally, they opened up the cell. They went out of the underground bunker and they realized that they're in the middle of nowhere. They're like literally in the middle of nowhere. There is nobody around them. So they decide to explore the area. All they ever found were other bunkers they can enter to replenish their supplies. But at the same time, every time they go in, all they find are dead bodies. So some bunkers are full of men, some bunkers are full of women, all of them are full of dead people. They were the only ones that managed to escape by sheer luck. All the guards also seem to have just left. So this girl, the only women she knew are gradually dying one by one. She wants to explore, but the women that she is with want to settle down. They're getting older, they pair off, they build huts, they want to just grow old peacefully. I liked it a lot. I thought it was very interesting. What kind of person a little girl might grow up to be, inhabited in a world like that where there are no men around and there are therefore no male-female relations whatsoever. I do think it's a little bit sad that she does end up being the only person in the world and she kind of like dies alone. But at the same time, she has only ever lived for herself. I think it also does challenge the idea that a woman's life has value only if she participates, I guess, in what we would call the symbolic order. But she exists outside of the symbolic order, or maybe adjacent to it. According to my plan, I said that I was going to read the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu, which is like 4 books that are this thick, right? I did it! I don't think I've ever read anything of this scale. I enjoyed myself. It's a kind of like a multi-generational silk punk saga. You start out with this guy called Kuni, and he's kind of like a nobody. In book 1, after a lot of things happen, he manages to become the emperor of all the land. Book 2 is about the children. Book 3 is about the children after they have grown up, and then in book 4 it's about those children's children, so his grandchildren. So really is like a multi-generational thing. I think you need stamina to commit to a series like this. It's worth it. It's really worth it. And I really liked that no matter which book it is, no matter which arc, no matter which combination of characters, there is a very clear love of language in any situation. The idea of language here is a very broad definition. Music is a language, writing is a language, different forms of writing is a language, coding, programming, these are languages as well. Pictures, they are language. I know that this is like silk punk, so it's not meant to be realistic. It's meant to be like a fantastical world where dragons exist. But for me, I feel like the most unrealistic thing about this series is how any and every problem can be solved by good engineering. This is a very pro-engineering novel. If I were a child and I was reading this book, I might want to study engineering, you know? But I think that it gives a very misleading impression of what engineering in our world does. Maybe because we don't have dragons. So I have like 4 more books I want to talk about. I'm just gonna do it quickly because these are weird books. Supplication by nour abi-nakhoul. It's told from the perspective of somebody who suffered some kind of trauma. She doesn't remember her past at all. When she wakes up, she is like born again, and all she can understand is what is in front of her. She is in a basement, she is tied to a chair, there is a man in front of her, the person who kidnapped her. She's surrounded by disgusting insects, but she manages to psycho herself into thinking that this is a situation that she wants to be in. The guy stabs her in the gut. It is something that she wants, something that she made happen. So this is kind of like her way of wresting agency, or like squeezing it out, right, of a situation that doesn't really afford her much agency. After she gets stabbed, she either dies or she symbolically dies again. When she gets up, she is not tied to the chair. She leaves the house, she stalks the guy a little bit, finds out he has a daughter, so he's some kind of psychopath. And then she goes back to her old apartment that she remembers, but she also doesn't remember. It's all become very alien and unfamiliar to her. She has become very alienated within her own body, within her own society, her own community. There is this black eel thing that enters her body and that she later vomits out. And it seems like the only way that she can make sense of her new existence is by inflicting violence upon others. I found this book to be a fever dream. The reviews are a little bit low. I understand why. Because this is weird. It's like super weird. You cannot go in thinking there's going to be like a straightforward linear narrative. Things are going to make sense. Things are going to be logical. No. Nothing makes sense. Everything is like a subjective nightmare. Another book that's really weird, it's called The Bridegroom Was a Dog by Yoko Tawada. So Yoko Tawada, she does write kind of weird books, right? This book, it's kind of like a short story. It's about a woman. One day this guy shows up at her house and moves into it. and he acts like a dog. So you can only imagine what it is like to have sex with somebody who acts like a dog. It's definitely a little bit gross. Until now, I have no idea what the message could be, or if there even is one. Maybe like the message is that people are like damn judgmental, you know, in small towns, and you should just don't care about them and just do whatever you want because it's your sex life. Who cares, right? Yeah. Next, Tenderloin by Sorman. This is translated from French as well. It's about a guy whose dream is to be a butcher. So he goes to like butchery school, and then he enters like butchery competitions, and then he gains like a reputation for himself. I don't eat like mammals, and I don't eat red meat. So like all the descriptions about like the types of pork, the types of beef, I'm not so sure that I can understand the attraction to a good cut of meat. So this guy, in order to become a better butcher, he needs to familiarize himself with all the stops along the production chain. His relationship with meat completely overshadows all his other relationships. He doesn't have any long-term relationships with anybody. In the end, he decides to return to a natural state of living that he feels is the correct way of like hunting your own meat, developing that kind of relationship with the animal, so that when you kill them to eat their meat, it is like a sacred thing. He goes back to the factory where he did his training, and then he like lets out the animals. There's this also one scene where he goes into the meat locker and then he's like dancing with the meat. So I don't know. It's not for everyone. It's a bit strange. Another weird book that I read is Nails and Eyes by Kaori Fujino. This book has 3 short stories inside. The first one is like very long, and then the other 2 are like this and like this. The first story, it's about this woman who reads a little bit like a sociopath to me. She doesn't really care who she hurts. So she doesn't have long-term relationships, has no qualms having an affair with a married man. So when the married man's wife dies in a balcony accident, nobody knows how she dies. She moves into the house because to her it's like, I get to quit my job, I don't need to work, I can just like live off this guy. And anyway, it's so easy to take care of the daughter because the daughter is already so well trained by her deceased mom. She doesn't talk, she doesn't make a mess. I don't even need to tell her to do anything. She takes care of herself. So she feels like, oh, this is like an easy thing for me. I'm just gonna move into the house and enjoy life. And she neglects the stepdaughter quite badly. And then she even starts an affair with like a bookseller. The whole story is told from the perspective of the daughter. And in the end, the daughter does get her revenge. The second story in this book freaked me out a little bit at the end when I realized what was happening. So it's about this old woman. She is in like an elderly care facility, and she doesn't like this random guy who she's not sure whether he's a patient or whether he works in the facility. He's just there. He's unfailingly polite to everybody. At night, it is implied like that he rapes her, like this old woman. And this guy is like 21, college age, and in the morning she doesn't remember. All she has is like an inkling that she doesn't like him. This guy also stands outside the toilet when her daughter and granddaughter are helping her go to the bathroom. I suspect he's like listening in. It's an uncomfortable read for sure, but I do think that this is something that happens. The third story is about this woman who has basically given up her social life after she became a mother. She has a son who comes home one day from the playground crying, begging her not to leave, and she doesn't know why. But she knows that she paid like 6,000 yen to go for some dinner, and she really wanted to go. She wanted to see her friends again, you know, just for this one night. But unfortunately, just this one night, her son comes back from the playground in a bad state, and she cannot leave the house until it's 7 p.m. when her husband comes home. When she goes to the event, like the food is already cold and disgusting. And then when she came back home, the husband told her he believed that he was cursed by a ghost at the playground, and she's like just stressed that he is going to become bullied because now he's known as being the one who is cursed. And the mother, maybe because she's experiencing some kind of break, or maybe she's just like so fucking tired of single-handedly parenting without much help from her husband, she tells the son, okay, I'm going to prove to you that everything is fine. And then she forces him to leave the house and go to the playground. I don't think the horror lies in the little ghost in the playground. I think the horror lies in the fact that if you empathize a bit more with the mother, how unfulfilling her life is, so much so that she has to like gaslight herself all the time about how her friends are missing out and she is the one that gets to experience the joys and sweetness of motherhood. Or you can say that maybe like the horror is at the end, where the mother doesn't care whether or not the son is afraid or not, but she forces him out of the house to confront something that she knows is terrifying him. This is a portion of the books that I have read. There are some that I want to read the continuations of before I talk about them. So that's it for now. Other than that, I am going to Canada to visit family. People come to see me for my baby, so now I have to bring my baby to go and see them. I'm looking forward to it because I think like without my parents around, it will be less stressful. Grown-up children understand this feeling. I just want to go to a bookstore. I just want to eat sandwiches. That's all. That's all I want, like books and sandwiches. So I'm looking forward to my books and sandwiches. Maybe I'll do like another book video when I come back. I'll think about it. That's all. Thanks for watching. Bye.